So welcome to today's social system mapping sense-making session for August the 2nd, 2021. But your hosts today are me, Christine Capra, co-founder of Greater Than the Sum and sort of pioneer of social system mapping, and Lisa Negstead, a co-social system mapper and co-HSD practitioner. I'm going to share my screen. So for today, we're going to do introductions in a moment. There's a brief video that we're going to watch, and I'm going to do some framing, which sort of fits into all of that. And then we will put you into breakout sessions. And then we're going to review the CDE model and related constraints and review the difference matrix. Both of these things we introduced in our session last month, and the CDE model we actually introduced even before that, but it's all worth looking at again and again. So we're going to review them to sort of get us all on the same page, and then we'll do another round of breakouts with the same group for longer, and then we'll have some review and feedback. So, and I see, oh, welcome, Brian.
Good morning.
And welcome, Michelle, if you want to. Hi. Okay, so let's get started by Carol, how about if we need to share the we're going to do most of our work today using Mentimeter, which is an online presentation tool plus survey, sort of you can give input, etc. So Kara, can you put, or have you put the Mentimeter, the link to the Mentimeter in the chat on your computers? Click on that link, and that will be the place where you can give us, where we'll do some interaction there as well as interaction in the breakouts. So if you are in and can see the agenda slide for today, would you just wiggle your fingers or wave your hand, let me know. Okay, David, great. Jonathan, great. Ben, great. Usnet, great. Joe, thanks. Michelle, how are you doing? In slide 2, which is what you should be seeing now, share your name, pronouns, location, and networks that you're supporting in some way. And I see some of you have gotten started on that, which is great. Thank you, Michelle, for the thumbs up. It's good to just make sure you're not trapped somewhere you don't want to be, and that you have support if you need it. But yeah, I was hoping you could see it in Mentimeter too.
It just says, thanks, we received your input. Add another above if you want.
Okay, so here.
But now we can see it on your shared screen. Okay.
I think we've got everybody, but I'll give you a moment to read each other's. Welcome to, we have some people who show up regularly, and we see each other frequently and feel really familiar with one another. And then we have some people that have either are brand new today or we have not seen in a while. So welcome to both sets of people. And I just want to acknowledge that we know that there's those differences in the room. And I'm going to stop sharing. And I want to sort of give us some grounding in what we're thinking about today and what we're sort of aiming for. So social system mapping is ultimately about systemic transformation. So welcome, Aaron. We see you joining us. And we're just getting started. And let's have you, oh, Jim's here. I didn't see that either. Aaron, for your sake, I'm just putting a link to our Mentimeter, not to rush you if you're getting all your tech stuff together, but if you can, and if you can get that link and go ahead and put your information in the Mentimeter that slide is asking you about, that would be great. And here we have Mary Roscoe joining us. I'm going to put the link in once more. And now I'm going to go ahead and start talking about framing. So as I was saying, social system mapping is ultimately about systemic transformation. So it's about supporting the shift that is trying to become manifest in the world from systems of dominance and extraction and exploitation to systems of connection and reverence and regeneration. So social system mapping isn't an end in itself, but it's part of a path toward making a world where all beings are sovereign and are thriving. But how might that transformation even happen given, just everything that's going on globally at the large scale? I'm going to quote, read a quote from a guy that I've had the honor of working with, Michael Quinn Patton, who is kind of a rock star in the realm of evaluation relative to complex human systems. And in his book, his latest of many books, Blue Marble Evaluation, he says, transformation is not a project. It is multidimensional, multifaceted, and multi-level, cutting across national borders and intervention silos, across sectors and specialized interests, connecting local and global, and sustaining across time. A theory of transformation. So, am I not sharing? No, not yet. Okay, so, sorry, I'm easily distracted by DMs. Okay, back to Michael's quote. A theory of transformation incorporates and integrates multiple theories of change operating at many levels that, knitted together, explain how major system transformation occurs. So I wouldn't agree completely that transformation is I wouldn't agree that transformation is a phenomenon that happens only at the scale that Michael's referring to, which is global. But I think that most of us are pretty serious about transformation at the scale that he's referring to. But what he's talking about, even if we don't go all the way up to that scale, is hard work because of that kind of multidimensionality that he's referring to is super complex. And we humans have been trained. I think we innately have a better sense of how to think in that complexity, but it's kind of been trained out of us, I would say. So we're in our current context not really used to thinking at that level of complexity. But anyway, so what he's referring to are networks, and clearly networks are key. But for those of us who have been working in networks, we know that they're challenging because they operate from a different mental model from the one that we usually see when dealing with lots of people working on many different parts of large goals. Most of the models that we have use a top-down approach to organize complex work across large scales. So it's not just that we need to change from a top-down structure. So I'm sure that most of you have dealt with the challenges of figuring out how work gets done in complex, large-scale contexts without hierarchy. But it's also that networks are more complexly motivated. They don't have the kind of single clear purpose that we're used to trying to create in organizational contexts. And networks are far less clearly bounded. So many of our deepest assumptions about collective work at scale fall apart in network contexts. And we understand in networks that command and control don't work in complexity. We understand that in complexity, we can't predict outcomes, but what we can do is we can set conditions for the kinds of change that we want to see. And so understanding how change happens in complex systems and understanding what conditions we need to set to get the kinds of change we want, those are also key. Networks are key, and understanding complexity is key. So these are the three conditions that I think are critical to this goal of systemic transformation, which are also relevant to social system mapping, and which social system mapping is meant to support. Understanding and developing, the first one, understanding and developing relationships, which is not just helping people get to know one another, but also building trust and love, and understanding how the dynamics of power and privilege and trauma and history impact all of our relationships, so that we can start to figure out how to shift those dynamics beyond the scale of just one-to-one. I mean, it has to start with one-to-one, but then how to shift that outward. The second condition that I believe is critical is for the whole network to be able to see itself as a network, to understand itself as a system, and to begin to be able to coordinate and cooperate in ways that nurture not just each part, but that nurture the health of the whole system. And then the third condition that I think is critical for systemic transformation is an understanding of and an ability to work within complex systems. So, I mean, I see lots of people trying to work in networks, trying to scale networks, and it can just become a lot of work that I think we could leverage those networks far more and get a lot more impact if the people in the networks also understand how complex change happens and how to work in complexity. So all of those three things, social system mapping is meant to help with. And Human Systems Dynamics, I have found to be the most accessible approach to understanding complexity in human systems at all scales, not just in network scales. And social system maps, I think, are really meant to be able to support that. And I'm just noticing that this has taken way too long. So so Lisa, let's go ahead and have you do jump to the next step. And okay. Sorry. Right. I just want to let everybody know I'm having one of those days where I'm kind of my thinking about trauma all weekend and my working on my trauma all weekend sort of brought up a whole lot of stuff. And so I'm a little awkward and a little shaky. And so that's what's going on. And I trust you'll all be able to bear with me, and we'll just make it work. So
yes.
Thank you, Lisa, for taking
Sure. So we want to do a little more connecting and just kind of seeing who's here. So you were sharing and then now it stopped sharing, Christine. So if you could share again, please. So we'll see who's here. And those of you who came in a little bit later, you've added now to the Mentimeter. So you'll see who's here. And then we wanted to add, can we go back, Christine, to who's here?
No, we don't. Oh, okay. Sorry.
Right, because there's new people that came in. So we're taking a look here to see the introductions. And you can put this through the Mentimeter link that's in your chat. And I think that has covered everybody who's been in here. And then we also want to ask you a couple questions just to get a read of the room so we know about how to kind of frame the rest of this session. And the first question we have for you is your experience with HSD. Is that the first one, Christine? Yep. Let's go to the next one. Okay.
Yep. No, social system mapping. Wait.
Oh, okay. So it's social system mapping. So just want to know how familiar you are with it. And we have some options. If you go over to the Mentimeter link, we've changed that slide and there's 4 options there. So please select the option that best fits you and your connection to social system mapping. And let me just check to see how many we have. 13 in the room. Okay. So we're hoping to get 13 of you to fill out that.
Are you counting me and Kara?
All right, so we're hoping to get 11 of you. Great, we have most of you now with that. So let's see which one it is. Can find my way around is the majority of you. Some of us have worked on creating and teaching others and not even sure what we're talking about. So you'll see as we go throughout this session that we will explain more about social system mapping. And there is a bit of just having to leap into it and trust that you'll learn some about what it is as we go through this. We're in a sense-making session today. So we are kind of starting with, here's a map and let's do some sense-making with it. Let me go to the next one here, which is just wanting to get also a read of how many of you are familiar with the field of human systems dynamics. And there are 4 options on your Mentimeter screen right now for that. If you could fill out the one I just filled out. So we'd like to just know how many of you are familiar, if any of you are HSD practitioners, because you can help us out with explanation and background on HSD. So I think we have, do we have everybody?
Yep.
Okay, great. You can
So,
see there. Yeah, Christine.
oh, I'm just thinking, so no one is totally unfamiliar with either framing. But there are people who are pretty familiar with, fairly familiar with social system mapping and not so much with HSD. And one person who has a rough idea of HSD and no idea of social system mapping. So there's like two rather complex fields that we're sort of overlapping, and just noting that no one is absolutely unknown to both of them.
Uh-huh.
But we have different levels. Okay.
Okay, so let's take a minute to go into your breakout rooms here. And, oh wait, I think Christine, were you gonna do anything else around that?
Well,
or should we go to?
Let me just, so we had some things we wanted to share about sense making in complex situations, and I think we will skip that. But I just want to say a little teeny bit quickly about the whole, I've been thinking a lot lately about this business of complexity and cognitive overload, and how that can be overwhelming for people. I mean, that's been just a topic for a lot of us lately, is how do we deal with that in the context of social system mapping? And realized recently that, our culture, this is part of, my doing a lot of thinking about trauma lately, but we have a culture where, the smartest guy in the room has the most power, where logic is privileged over other kinds of knowing. And so I just realized that it makes perfect sense that if you feel like I'm not understanding in a cognitive way what these people are talking about, that you would feel anxious and like you're going to be left behind and excluded. And so I've just been really thinking about that, the anxiety of cognitive overload, because it feels like just because there's a lot of information doesn't necessarily mean we should be anxious, but in our culture, it makes perfect sense. So part of what we want to be thinking about is how can we make it feel safe, even if we're overwhelmed? How can we, like me just saying I'm anxious today because I'm a little overwhelmed, that's part of me trying to help myself feel safe. And then you guys give me your little hearts or thumbs up, and then I feel a little bit less anxious. But how can we also do that for other people, even in a context where they don't feel comfortable enough to say I'm anxious or I'm overwhelmed? Because just that sense of safety makes us be able to sense better, as well as hopefully reduce the anxiety around the cognitive overload. So I just wanted to put that out there, and we can skip the videos and stuff since I've been too long-winded. So go ahead, Lisa.
I think that's really helpful, Christine, because I know as I was studying Human Systems Dynamics, there's a lot of letting go of how I've been educated, and especially educated about leadership and networks, and just having to just be in the moment and be present in the moment with what we're learning. And I feel that even facilitating these kinds of things. So what we'd like to do though is just have you go into your breakouts and get to know each other, because you'll be in those breakouts a couple times, and to play with some of these ideas. And the first ones are just a time to do an intro with each other. And I think we have a couple conversation prompts for you. If we can put those up, that would be great.
Sorry, I'm just, okay.
So we'll give you 5 minutes to just introduce yourself. And then these are some conversation prompts if they're the ones that you're feeling called to, kind of talking about what your background is with social system mapping or with human systems dynamics. And in your breakouts too, there will be somebody who will be kind of your facilitator for that. And so that can help with the conversation. But just a time to introduce yourself, use these conversation prompts if that feels helpful. And we can also put them in the chat once you're in the breakouts, and you'll have them with you. So we'll see you back in 5 minutes.
Kara, are you ready? Sorry. Okay. we're
Maybe I didn't register, which I thought I did, but
you did.
You're good. It was a me problem.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good. I feel suddenly, then my computer just stopped about 5 minutes ago. And anyway, it's a Monday morning.
It's a Monday morning. We're all reflecting on how deep our cultural norms are in creating our trauma of fear of lack of perfection and,
what's wrong with me? Yeah.
So we evidently had a link snafu, which is why we have I expected more people to show up and they didn't, and we had a link snafu, and it's not the end of the world. And Mary was feeling like maybe it was her fault, and it's not, and it's not the end of the world. So I just,
Brian, sorry, I hit the go back anyway.
it's all good. We're here together.
Yes.
Okay, Lisa, I'm going to shut up now, hopefully.
Oh yeah, welcome back. We're going to do a little introduction of a model we use in Human Systems Dynamics. And if some of you have been to other sense-making sessions, you've seen this model, but it's a really helpful model, we think, for applying to networks and self-organizing systems. It helps us see the patterns in self-organizing systems, and which is what networks are. And when we see the patterns, we can look at the dynamics of those, and that points to kind of identifying where we might want to shift the pattern, where that change would happen. And so we put it into 3 different parts of the pattern. Like, it's called the container, the difference, and the exchange. And we're going to go one by one and just explain those. And it might be helpful to you as we're talking about this model to be thinking of your own network that you are a part of, and be thinking about what are the containers, the differences and exchanges in your own network. So let's start with container and take a look at that. So a container is any bounding condition in your network. So it could be individuals or organizations. If it's a network of organizations, it could be values that you hold, values that the group holds, values that the individuals hold. It could be perspectives, certain goals, physical locations. It's just any bounding condition. We have asked this group before to brainstorm some ideas of that, and we have a word cloud here that just shows you a lot of great examples of it. And would ask you to think about too as your own network, like what ones kind of stand out for you, at least today, stand out for you as bounding conditions in your network. So just give you a minute to look at this slide. There's a lot of good examples in here of containers.
And can I just say, Lisa, the containers work sort of like a set of Russian dolls, in that there are bigger containers, there are containers within containers, and containers exist within larger containers. So there's always a question of what scale are we trying to pay attention to right now? What's a useful scale to pay attention to? And then what are the containers within that scale? And also sometimes the ones just outside of that scale as well.
That's super helpful, Christine. We sometimes call it the greater part in the whole, but that's always helpful to know. And we don't have to worry about, are we at the right scale? It's kind of what feels right now, what's merging right now for our network. So let's go to the next one, which is difference. And especially those of you who know HSD, please add in, either speak into the room or add into the chat as we're talking through this model. It'd be great, just like Christine did. So this is another component of looking at a pattern. We call it pattern logic sometimes in HSD. So difference is any distinction across parts of the system, or parts of the network. And often difference can point to where we're having the most tension, which is actually pointing to where change might want to happen. And this is going to be key for kind of playing with a social system map that we're going to do a little bit later here. But here are some examples of difference. So different interests, different assets, different level of experience in networks, or experience in the kind of network you're in, cultures, learning styles, roles. You see that informal, formal power. So again, we're going to go to a slide that just gives us some even more examples when we've asked people to think about their networks and what are the differences there. So I take you a minute to look at that. This is a good time to have any of you add in about difference or distinction. There's a great question in chat as you're reading this about difference. Can anyone suggest a good intro to HSD? Maybe I'll invite Kara to just put the hsdinstitute.org website in the chat. And if you go to, there's a great search function there, but there's also a tab there about the upcoming trainings. And there's a lot of different ways to plug into that. And those of you who are HSD practitioners here too might have ideas you could pop in the chat. Thank you, Kara. Okay, let's look at the third one, the third piece of this model. So we looked at container differences. Now we're looking at exchanges. So this is the flow and transfer of energy, resources, information. And you see the examples here of funding flows, friendship, like relationship happens here. This swapping skills, building trust. You can see there's sort of a range of intangible and tangible with this too. Bartering, collaborations, language connection. So let's take a look here at some other examples that when people are thinking about their networks of examples of exchange. We'll pull up the word cloud. Take a minute to look at that. Anything else anyone wants to add to this? I'll turn it over to Christine to take it from here.
Okay, so again, that's container. And this showing here, yep, there are containers and subcontainers and overlapping containers, differences and exchanges. And those three conditions are key to our understanding of complexity. So a thing, when we're talking about what are the containers, what are the differences, and what are the exchanges, a thing to realize is that what we're trying to do, there is no right or wrong. There is no right amount of exchanges, right amount of differences, right amount of right size of containers. What you're trying to do is understand how they all three relate to each other and find a healthy balance that moves you in a generative direction. So you could have a container that's too small that can't really hold the differences in the exchanges that are going on. Or you could have, I'm just sort of whipping through this, but you could have, let me just go back here. So all three of those dimensions can be constrained. They can be really tight or they can be really big and limitless. So super finite or super infinite. And so that's what you're trying to understand is when you're looking at your system or trying to think about the complexity inherent is how constrained or unconstrained are these things, and then how does that relate to the rest of them? So you could have a constrained container that's too small for what it's trying to deal with. You could have an unconstrained container that's too big. You could have too small a bunch of differences, or you could have too many differences for the container and the exchanges that are happening. You could have too few exchanges, and you could have too many exchanges. So in HSD, there's this difference matrix, which helps us think about within the context of a given container. I mean, if the bigger we make the container, the harder it is to tell, to define these things or understand these things. But whatever the container you choose is, so you want to first wisely choose what's the container we want to look at right now for this particular moment to address this particular issue or question that we're holding. A container that has a lot of difference and a lot of exchanges is an emerging context, can lead to radical change, be very generous and lots of learning. It can also be very dangerous and conflictual and destructive. So at the moment in lots of countries, but in the United States, especially right now, we're sort of in this high exchange or on high difference. We've always had high difference, but we haven't had a lot of conversation about that difference. And now we're having that conversation. So we're in this emerging stage, which is both dangerous and scary, but could be generative, depending on how we move forward. If we, hang on. So that was this one. High difference, high exchange. Low difference and low exchange is just nothing changes. It's very reinforcing, it's very bonding, so it can feel very safe, but also unproductive and boring and exhausting if you're just sort of doing the same old thing and there's no fresh energy being introduced into the system or into the container. A high difference, low exchange situation, which is sort of, if we think about in terms of race in the United States, I would say, especially like the 80s and 90s maybe was a period where we had like, a lot of people thought race was solved. It was no longer a problem. And so we had low exchanges. We didn't have much conversation going on about that. We just had some assumptions, but we still had the differences. So that was a situation where we were holding tension. Like things might be changing internally, but it felt safer. People were holding back. And in that kind of context, it can blow up. It can be isolating and it can generate a lot of fear, which I think we're pretty much all could see that that's what happened. And then low difference and low exchange, stability, comfort, relaxation, which is also entropic and can just allow and generate ignorance and irrelevance. So those are the difference matrix. And I think we have a slide so that you'll be able to see that in your breakouts, but we want to pause here and just sort of see where are we in terms of what we've done so far. So there's a slide on the in the Mentimeter with a few questions for you to answer just about where you are right now in terms of your own sense of this is confusing or this is boring. I already know it all. And so I'm inviting you to go.
So let me just add a couple things, Christine, as people are filling this out. So, you know, Christine went pretty quickly through those visuals of what happens when you have different levels of exchange and difference and container. And then what I really like about the table we really focused on in the second step is that you pick a container and then work the difference in exchange, because it can get really overwhelming with all the layers, the part, whole, greater whole, when we're looking at some of those visuals. So if that can be a place to start, is we pick a container, and we're going to be doing that in a minute. So I just want to kind of highlight that we're shifting. When we shifted to that table, you just pick any container and do the difference exchange table on it. I just was like struck by how much there's the both and in each one of those, right? So anytime we're in complexity, we're seeing both and at once. And can be really helpful in our networks. It's just something I'm sort of highlighting for that. So let's see where people are at here.
We've got 6 responses so far. That was really helpful, Lisa. Thank you.
And then I'm seeing Jonathan had a question. I'm thinking that the platform, live, virtual, email, number of people involved could be an important factor in what emerges. Yep. So you can pick one of those and look at difference and exchange. Yeah, and so in the example we're going to go into in a minute, we've already chosen the containers, and it's the regular meetings that we have. So it can be, yes, Twitter could be a container, or you know, some kind of gatherings can be a container. So it's quite applicable in a lot of ways.
Lisa, Christine, this is Jo. One of the things that helps me define a container properly is the wicked issue. Yeah. The challenge that we are looking at. That, not to forget that the wicked issue, the way that it is formed, needs to have a paradox, also reflecting the complexity, right? Like the different ends or different things that are the tension pulling things in the network that is happening or in the situation. So starting there and then honing down into a container will help. I have also seen starting with the exchanges as well, because those are very much in your face. Yeah. Sometimes the exchanges are, there is a tangibility to those exchanges. So there is no particular order. I have started some anywhere in that CDE model to help define. it's starting with the wicked issue and then getting to the adaptive shift, and we can take any which direction we would want to go to navigate the situation. I hope that helps.
Yeah, I think that's very helpful. Just pointing out that we start with the question, we start with the wicked issue before we start to dig into what are the containers, differences, and exchanges. And that, if we're not clear what that is, we're gonna totally overwhelm ourselves. Okay, so if we have 9 responses, I think we're good. And Lisa, what are you thinking? I mean, what do you think? What do you think?
I'm seeing a few people just ready to shut down. So I'm hoping that if we go, and actually Joe just pointed out the perfect place we're going to, which is we're going to identify, we're going to get in a little bit closer here and identify a sticky issue or a wicked issue, and do some exploring in the small group. And I'm hoping also the small group might help with that. If there's any ideas about how you can feel less overwhelmed, please pop them in the chat if we can help with that. But wanting to just point to where we're going. Christine, did you have any thoughts about this too?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that, you know, when we first started designing these sessions, there was a point when I was feeling totally overwhelmed because there's a huge difference, and we've already sort of referred to it, but there's a huge difference in who shows up to these sessions. Some people have never heard of any of this, no matter which session we're talking about. We've got 4 different sessions over the month, and some people attend every single session. And so there's always a huge tension in me of how do I make sure that everybody's needs get met, that the people who come all the time don't get bored, and that the new people feel safe and welcomed and encouraged, even if it's somewhat overwhelming. And so I was like, feeling like I had to solve all of that myself. And so I was writing and writing and writing and planning and planning and planning. And finally something sort of broke in my head, and I stopped and I went, go to the difference and exchanges thing, Christine, and actually think this through. Like, quit trying to solve it all from just out of my own head. And I went through it, and I realized, okay, we need to leverage these differences and not just make, you know, for me to stop playing hero and thinking I have to take care of it all. And so that's why we now define the breakouts the way we do, which is we ask somebody who is not overwhelmed and who could be getting bored to help the people who potentially are overwhelmed, or for whom this is still just new enough that they're confused, to not only understand, but to feel welcome, to feel like they're getting some, you know, relational interaction, and to feel more safe. So once I saw that, then the structure changed, and that's what we're going to move into. But I just want to show how applying that difference in exchange thing helped me think about how to do these sense-making sessions. Okay, and David, I'm glad you feel welcome. And of course, if you have something to contribute to the long-term objectives, remains to be seen, but we'll figure that out together in relationship. Okay, so yeah.
Could I speak if it's
Pardon me?
all right?
Hi.
Could I speak if it's all right?
Yeah, please. Welcome.
Oh, Christine, I can completely relate to what you're saying, you know, trying to be thoughtful and considerate to everyone who is at the table. One thing I'm going to do as a new person is make requests.
Yes.
Ask if I'm overwhelmed, what can help me be less overwhelmed? I'm going to just make a request for the group. I'm going to make requests post the session to understand things better. I'm going to reach out to HSD professionals in my city to understand this better. So that is something from my end.
Yes.
What can I do?
Yes.
So, and making requests, ask, and ask.
Love you for saying that.
Yeah. Oh my God. It's sinking in. I learned this in the last session in nonviolent communication. You have a need, ask, and ask. Someone will meet that need, but you need to ask.
Yes.
So,
thank you. Okay, Lisa, you want to take it away?
It's really great. I feel like this is what I'm learning here is to ask back to the group when we have something like this. I mean, I think Christine's framing about how we're designing this is helpful. And then I also think the asking back to the group, the question back to the group. So thank you for that learning. So we have this sticky issue we want to propose to you. And actually, I'll skip ahead to the sticky issue for a minute, Christine, on the slides.
Oh, wait.
And what these are, you know, when we say sticky issue or wicked issue, I'm just going to define that for a minute. If that's new to you, it means something like Joe just mentioned that has a paradox at the heart or feels like a polarity there. Where it's kind of got both sides and it's not just, you can't just have one answer, or feels like a problem that we never can solve, or something that kind of keeps emerging, or we think we've solved it, right? And it keeps coming back. And so that's a sign that we're in this wicked issue, and it needs a different attention to it, right? Than just solving a problem. And so we've identified one that happens in our community of practice around social system mapping. And it's, how do we help our whole community of practice connect across the asks and offers that our community have done in a way that doesn't require Christine to be at the middle, to either facilitate or be responsible for anything or lead anything. So you can see now what Joe was talking about, how if you have a sticky or wicked issue, then you can apply this work around the difference matrix on that. And so what we're doing is defining the sticky issue for you. And we're going to ask you to go into small groups and do some work with differences and exchanges based on this sticky issue. And then we also want to identify that we're going to build on what exists. So it's not just we're starting with a clean slate. There's a lot already here with this community of practice. For example, there are 4 meetings. So let's look at that next slide. So we already have some structure in our community of practice. So this is containers within which we're working. So the first Monday we have SenseMaking sessions. The second Mondays we do an on-ramp as kind of an introduction to social system mapping for folks who maybe haven't ever been introduced to it or want to learn more of the kind of nuts and bolts of what social system mapping is. Third Monday we have deep dive conversations. And then the fourth Monday we do tech talks. So this is the container within which we're already working. And so what we'd like you to do is in your small groups, be looking at the differences and exchanges, apply that difference matrix, and we'll send that with you into your small groups with the sticky issue of how we might work on those asks and offers. So let's go back to the sticky issue question, please.
Oops, sorry. There.
So how do we help our whole community practice connect without having Christine in the middle? Okay, so you have these tools available for you of our container we're working in, which is the current community practice sessions on the first Mondays, every Monday. And then we don't want Christine in the middle. So as you go into your breakout.
Lisa, I need to pause. So just to show how complex systems are always shifting.
A lot of people leaving.
Are more experienced people. So Joe and Ben and Jim all have to leave at the top of the hour. Which is, so our containers are shifting, our breakout rooms are shifting. And wanted to give, I know Kara's got a heads up on that. Kara, can you just say what that's going to do to, and were you aware Jim was also needing to leave?
Yeah.
Okay.
We could maybe like we'd be down to Mary.
So we could maybe do it all together, or
how many does that leave of us then? I'm just curious. If we lose Ben, Jim, and Joe.
8.
Does anybody else need to leave at the top of the hour? Just please speak now.
It might be a good time for me to check out too, because I'm not sure I could help here. So.
Okay, thanks for coming. So let's do this. Let's just, since we're going to go into breakouts in just a moment, Lisa, as soon as Lisa finishes her prep, but let's just say goodbye to those of you who did show up, and we love you, and we hope to see you again. And you don't have to disappear this minute, but I'm just saying, since we'll be in the middle of our discussion at the top of the hour. And so then we're just leaving. Yes, we'll do the 15. We'll just all stay together instead of doing a breakout. Lisa, that's what you wanted to do?
I think that's probably going to be, yeah.
Okay. Ben, you know, I forgot to tell you it was an hour and a half when we mentioned this. So yeah.
No worries.
All good.
There's some small chance when I get into my next call that we'll just reschedule and I'll come back. But
thank you.
All right.
I'd love. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, this is cool. I'm sorry I'm not sticking around for more.
It's okay. It's good. So Lisa, I'll hand it over to you and we'll.
Okay, we're gonna do this together. So I think what we're gonna do is, I'm looking at my outline here for the breakout. So if we have, let's just remind ourselves of what we have. We have the sticky issue.
Mm-hmm.
How do we help our whole community practice connect across asks and offers? Let's also put up the difference matrix again and maybe give people a link to that one more time.
Do they, Lisa, Kara, have you been giving them the link to the, okay. And then I will go put it on the, I thought I put an extra slide of it up, down further, but anyway, okay. So it's on the screen share and it's also a link. So if you can open it up in, I think, a PDF as well. Okay.
And then are we showing do we want to show the map?
Do you have, Kara, what was that? Does that mean
Ben is back?
Ben is back?
I went to click on the calendar link and I guess he must have moved it back a half an hour. Or maybe I misread it. Here, if you want to go back to plan A and do breakouts or whatever. But.
Jim, are you actually leaving? Or are you're going away? Yes. Okay. So we have Mary and Jim Mary and Ben. Let's just vote all together or in breakouts. Everybody will get a little more time if it's in breakouts, but
Christine, let me just ask, like, this was something I forgot to confirm. Like, are they going to be showing the social system map and looking at asks and offers as part of this?
I think we were going to put the link into the chat so that people could, in the breakout, at least one person open it up and use it.
That's one thing I forgot to mention in the instructions, is that this is where we can look at a social system map of the community of practice and look at the asks and offers and look at exchanges and differences. And I think it'll really highlight some ideas.
Hopefully, but maybe not. But if not, then that will highlight that we need to change something about the map.
Yeah, right, okay. Exactly.
And Kara, I'm assuming you have the link and are ready to plop it in there.
No, that wasn't in our document.
Yeah, I know, but don't you have it like in your little links doc?
I have
you going, Brian?
Join, but not the embed link.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm talking about social systems mapping here. Could you explain really quickly the three hats? Because right now we're focused on the actual construction of the systems mapping, but there are other hats that are involved with the inspiration and bringing people together and the vision. And I think if the people who didn't know social systems mapping kind of got a quick idea about that, it might help a lot.
Do you want to do that while I'm looking for the link?
No, I don't think I'm qualified enough. I'd rather have somebody who has.
Ben, do you want to do it? Or Mary, do you want to do it?
I can do the three hats if that's helpful.
Okay.
Great.
I found the link, Christine. I just had it in a different spot.
So just a quick note on the three hats related to social system mapping. The first one, there's not an order. I'm just explaining. Is a visionary hat. So it's people in your network who hold a vision for what this could really do for the network, right? And how the map could really help your network, both with what you're trying to do in the network goals, but also help you see the system and see the self-organizing system that your network is. So the visioning hat really helps do that. The second hat is your technical hat. These are the people who are willing to dive in and know what in the background, how the map gets created, how sumApp connects to Kumu, how do you want to design views of the map so that it can really help your network and community. And it usually takes someone who's in the details and wants to learn and really connect that. And part of that too is also thinking about the design of what you want to ask to put on the map. So what kind of data and what do you want to ask in your survey? I actually feel like that runs throughout all the hats, right? Your visionary and your tech hat. And then the third hat, which is your SenseMaking hat, which is what today is all about. Like you have a map, we're trying to really figure out what right now in our network has the most tension that we want to help with. How can we use the map? How can we use complexity principles like we do like we're doing with Human Systems Dynamics to help us see the system, see our network, and figure out what our next wise actions are for the network. So hopefully that's helpful. Quick overview of those three hats.
Very helpful, thank you. And there can also be a tension between those three hats. Visionaries can feel really left out, or yeah, it's hard to bring them in sometimes.
And it's, and I was just going to add that it is a way of learning to work together across differences, because those three hat wearers have different mental models and different mental preferences of habits. And I find, you know, when I'm wearing any one of them, talking to people who are predominantly wearing a different one, it takes a lot more work for me to understand what page they're on, what we mean when we say map, when we say this, when we say that, when we say, so it like actually is a practice of learning to co-create with different people with different mental models. So it can be, sometimes it can be a little taxing, but it also, I believe, makes my brain actually become more able to shift into different perspectives and paradigms. And okay, we ready to, Lisa? Thanks for that question.
I think you were about to have people vote, but we do have enough people here and if they're willing to go into small groups, I think it'll give you more chance to just kind of play with things and look at the map. So I'm going to suggest that. And just to remind you that the social system map for the community of practice has a special view on the left-hand panel of asks and offers. So that's a place to look to get some information. And also those of you who are more involved in the community of practice or have been involved in any of those 4 Monday meetings, you can just be looking at that in the context of exchanges and differences and what might be pointing to you for ideas for this sticky issue. So there's a lot of information, a lot of different pieces of this. Any questions before we go into the breakouts?
Kara, have you got breakouts ready for, okay, thank you. And I'm just going to suggest that the people who are more experienced be ready to drive in the map for those people who are not familiar enough to, and those of you who just want to play with the map, go ahead and just play with the map. But I'm just suggesting there may be some guidance that will be helpful, or some driving of the map that will be helpful. Are we all good? Does anybody have any burning need they need to say before we go into breakout?
The map looks amazing. I've studied like 50, the map looks amazing. I've looked at about 50 community platforms, and wow, like they were not that great. They do not address the needs, and this map looks amazing. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you. Okay, I think we ready? Okay. Go ahead, Kara. Welcome back.
Welcome back. Okay, so Christine, why don't you show the slide?
Okay.
We're curious what insights you had, any ideas emerged from the community of practice, or it can just be whatever happened in your group if you're willing to share it with this group. And you could put it in chat, but it'd be easier to just talk into the room, I think, because we don't have a very big group.
We also have it in the Mentimeter, Lisa.
Oh, sorry, what's in the Mentimeter? Yes.
Either, however you want to do it.
Well, I can volunteer one thing. When I looked at the asks and offers, they're very generic and they don't apply to this community specifically. So if we wanted to know who would take on various roles that you take on, Christine, I don't see how we would know that from the map.
Mm-hmm.
So it would seem logical to either include it in the map, or if that doesn't make sense for some reason, to have a different system to know who can do what in service of the community.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's excellent insight. Go ahead, Christine.
Oh, I was just going to say, so that's one thing that sense making with this map, we could see on any map. Oh, that's something that the map, there's a gap in the map, and how now, what's the question we need to ask, both about either about relationships or groups or individuals that can help us answer that question visually. And then we would add that to the map. And so we'll figure that out. And yeah, I think that's important.
And those of you who are new to social system mapping, that's one of the great things about this particular mapping, is that we can always be adjusting and adapting it. Yep. I'm seeing here, small working groups might create a context to energize exchanges of offers. Yep. And interestingly, we actually have a plan. Narayan wanted to do a thing of that. So we're actually going to do a deep dive with something related to that.
Okay.
Yeah,
Am I
Priya?
interrupting?
No, go ahead.
Okay. I would actually like to add on to what Jonathan said. Mm-hmm. I want the user to get the big picture of what he's doing and get like 3 small actionable things that he or she can do. I'm going to be posting an example on the chat. So Mozilla teaches people how to read, write, and participate on the internet. Reading the internet would be how to navigate the web. And then example of writing would be writing a blog or something, writing a 20-word, 500-word blog. So here in our community, for example, getting people to participate in the mapping project, that can be the bigger goal. The specific ask that we can make is getting one person to make 3 changes in the mapping project. I'm very new. I'm sorry, I can't tailor it. So, like, as soon as I read it, I'm like, okay, what changes can I make? What are the changes that I'm already noticing?
Yeah.
What are the changes that person made? I like the changes that he made. I want to do what he said. So actionable asks is one thing, and the bigger picture. If you can go to the link that I've shared, there's a picture in the middle, below, which says read, write, participate, and they've broken it down to smaller tasks. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think, Priya, this is a good example of, so what we're trying to do when we're in complexity is use these models to help us, but then we're just figuring out the action, right? The actionable thing, the next wise action. And so, you know, of any of these, what you said are the 3 that are showing up on the insights. It's like, what is one thing that we want to try then? And then we come back and look at it again, make sense of it again, and say, okay, what did we learn from that one? So it could be any one of these that we want to try, and it doesn't really matter. It just sort of is what feels most emergent right now that we want to try for the network, and then we would do that. And so, you know, it might be any of these. Like, we might want to map the immunity to change piece and see what we learn. And you know, so this is the cycle we do in complexity, where we take a moment to look together and see what's emerging in the insights, and then we need that action step, and we come back, we try that, and then we come back. I mean, sometimes we get just caught in the kind of analysis using these models. It's like really interesting to see, but we have to shift it to the action point. So that's really great.
Yeah.
I am looking at time, Christine, and so let me just do a couple shifting here, because we do want to respect to the ending time here. And some of you are already doing this, like Priya just gave this example of what she's thinking about, but the sticky issue, like what right now is most that like kind of pressing wicked issue that has some paradox to it in your own network that you might apply. So we're always wanting you to kind of think about how you could use this in your own social systems, your own networks. So that's something just for you to be thinking about. I'll just probably leave that with you so that we can shift into just some feedback questions here in our last few minutes. So you can enter that if you'd like in the Mentimeter, or you can shift and go into the feedback questions we have for you. We have 3, so you can work your way through the Mentimeter. Let's start with this one. What big questions are you left with? I think we still have time to see this as it comes up.
Lisa, just to note, they can only do one at a time because the way Mentimeter is the slide is only showing.
Okay, so let's do this one.
Yeah.
What big questions are you left with? Now that we're coming to the end of our hour and a half together, let's just take a minute. If you could put your questions in here.
I'm still seeing sticky issue as my option to submit though.
Mm-hmm.
You can leap ahead. It says there's been an update.
Or maybe if you just refresh, it'll.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, at the top. Yeah, there's a new question.
Because I moved to the next slide.
Yep.
You okay now, Ben? Thank you.
Christine, you have any comments on these before we move to the next ones?
Just one thing I'm realizing as I'm looking at these comments and things is I'm realizing I don't know who wants to help work on other things. So like I may have an idea for a project or an idea for something to happen and we'll blast it out to the whole network or to the people in my head that I know of. Like I might ask Ben, I might say, Ben, here's an idea. Could we do this? But the new people who show up, or the people who, show up sporadically, I don't actually know if this is just a one-time thing and it was interesting for you, or if you actually have a need or a desire or a want to do something more with it. And so I just realized I don't know that. So I don't know how to even communicate. Like the map can help, but like at this point, before we have a map that can facilitate that, I don't know that much even. So I was just like noting that in my head and thinking, oh, what do I need to do about that fact?
Yeah.
So you could put it in the chat if you are really interested, but it's a bigger question than just for the people here now. But I was just noticing that coming up for me, and I'm complete on that. Lisa.
I think we should, since we're at the top of the hour, we should shift to, if you're willing to stay and answer the last 2 questions, which is what did you like? And what did you learn? Maybe let's go to let's skip ahead to what did you learn, Christine? Since of the time, is that okay?
Yeah, bye, Ben, thanks for coming.
If you're willing to leave us with that, we would appreciate that. And I think we'll do an official just goodbye. Any of you have to leave since we're at that 1.5 hour mark. I know you're all in different time zones. So maybe we'll just do our official goodbye and gratitude for being with us today and learning with us. And we'll hope to see you at another one of these sessions soon. So I will sign off and then send it over to Christine.
So
you're not sharing anymore, Christine, just so you know.
I'm doing that on purpose so that we can do our, so you feel free to keep putting it in there. It should still be up, but we have our little goodbye ritual is simply we all unmute and I count down 3, 2, 1. And then at that point, we just all give each other our gratitude and our blessings for the day. So all at once. So feel free to unmute if you want to do this with us, and then just feel free to jump off. So 3 and jump off before if you need to. 3, 2, 1. Love you all so much.
Great day.
Wonderful
It's been great
weekend.
to be with you
Thanks
all.
You too all.
I see myself reflected in Christine.
Thank you. So wonderful to have you all with us.